I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay. So call to order, and we've done the pledge of allegiance, roll call. Tom has sent emails that he won't be here. Matt, maybe, I have not heard nothing, but he may roll in here in a few minutes. I'd like to welcome Dottie. It's my first opportunity to work with her. Thank you for joining. I need a motion to accept the agenda. Motion by Leah, second by Doug.
Yep.
The agenda is accepted. Next on the agenda is the meeting minutes from April 17th, of which I missed, so I will not comment on due to computer programming. Does anyone have any comments or updates they'd like to make to the meeting minutes from April 17th? Do you have a motion to approve? Okay, so Courtney makes a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 17th. Do I have a second? Second. All right, seconded by Chris. Motion, I guess all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion minutes pass. Now let's open the meeting up for public comment. Do you have anything you'd like to add tonight? I think we can hear you either
Click
way.
the up button, and you can move it up towards your mouth. Oops. The whole thing.
Good evening, I'm Mike Van Gore, Council President. Here to talk about the lighting ordinance. First, I'd like to say thank you to Scott for all of his hard work on this ordinance. I'm excited about it moving forward. A couple of comments based on Exhibit A versus Exhibit B from a couple months ago. Under the residential, I see that there is a phrase added about the lighting used for agricultural.
Yeah, I think what page was that on?
Okay, that's better. Lighting used for agriculture and exempt under the Right to Farm Act.
Yep.
I was wondering if that could also reference then the standards down below under commercial and industrial lighting, specifically for lights on poles, no taller than, the buildings, et cetera, and the heights and the temperature, just to prevent high pressure sodium and the sulfur lights to be used. I think that it's certainly advisable to have farm lighting. I grew up in Fremont, Michigan, and a very rural community. Everything fed Gerber baby food, and I worked on many farms, and so I think that's important that they have it. Just wanted to maybe consider that could also be under the standards of the industrial, or not industrial, but the commercial lighting down below. If that could be referenced, I think that would be beneficial.
Wouldn't the foot candles though kind of cover all those measurements, Scott? For the brightness in that?
So I'm not exactly sure what he's asking for. So
Oh.
agricultural is allowed in the agricultural zoning district, which is a residential zoning district. Do you want us to reference the Right to Farm Act in the industrial district?
No, it just seems like you're referring to an agricultural light. For example, I know there's a house down the road from where I live. They have a high pressure sodium light on a pole exceeding the height of their barn. And I didn't know if that was what you were referring to coming under the Agricultural Act.
It has to be used for agricultural purposes, and then it would have to be approved by the MARD under their GAMPs. If you have let's say you had a complaint on a sodium lithium light that's on a pole, and you're calling us, I go out there and give a code violation. He claims that it's for agricultural purposes. Then we have to get the Michigan Department of Agricultural Rural Development together. They need to come out, do the GAMPS review, and make sure that light is being used for agricultural purposes. And usually they're going to side with the farmer.
Sure.
So, I mean,
This isn't
we don't have our
situation.
farmer on here today, but we have one of them. So
Right.
they'll know more about that. So The only way it more than likely wouldn't be is if it's like over a basketball court or something like that. Then they're going to be like, wait a second, this is not a farming purpose. This is your kid's baseball diamond or something
right.
like that.
Yeah, this is on a pole barn and it's not attached to a farm or anything like
Yeah.
that. The person has it
Yes.
residential.
So yeah, they would have to be exempt under the what is it? MDARD rules.
Okay.
So for right to farm act purposes, which is farm production and farm
Gotcha.
purposes.
Thanks for explaining. I was unfamiliar with all the nuances and ins and outs on that, and that is kind of.
Yeah, it is quite confusing, and you usually don't write it into your code because farmers all know they're exempt. I mean,
Sure,
we could take any portion of the code and they're exempt from it under the Right to Farm Act if the Right to Farm Act allows that use. So
there's no pole height or anything like that under the Right to Farm Act. Okay, and then that what I retract what I was
yeah,
saying earlier. So, couple of other things real quick. I appreciate the graphics that were added. I was wondering if reference to link to the Dark Sky International website could be also included, again, as a reference for people, not trying to tell people they need to pick a light from that website, but it gives people direct access to lights that are approved by an internationally recognized group. They list manufacturers and model numbers and things like that. I think the graphic is good. But I think it can also then be enhanced by information for people to reference that website. And again, it's a reference. It's not trying to tell people you got to pick something off this. So I made reference to that when we were reviewing the proposed ordinance last time.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to write a reference to it.
I have comments
Website or
on that
something
when we
else
get-
into it.
when we get to talking about
Okay.
it, because I'm guessing our attorney is not going to even let us have the graphics in there.
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can create a pamphlet or a handout that goes along with the regulations. I put the graphics in there because I like the graphics, but I'm guessing that when our attorney looks at this, won't want us to have these graphics. They usually don't like these types of graphics in there because I mean, it's not every single thing, isn't on that
Sure.
graphic.
Yep.
Where they like you to put that is like if you have a handout or it's attached to a light application or something like that, so that you can provide them with all that information at that point.
Sounds great.
So, but I put it in there because I've seen it in one of the ordinances that I have reviewed. So I reviewed a million different ones and I saw it in one and I was like, well, some attorney allowed this to go through. So
I like it and I hope it is maintained because again, I think it's helpful for people looking at the ordinance just as a guide,
Yeah.
right? To know what we're talking about here. I see light poles in the IART, the Industrial Auto Research and Testing Zoning District, was added, that those are 30 feet in height. Assuming that's for legacy, for existing light fixtures.
it's meeting the height of the light fixtures that the
Currently there.
Stellantis currently has on their
Yeah.
site.
Okay.
So
I do know I just gave a Michigan Energy Code talk to my firm this week. There is a 24-foot height threshold in ASHRAE 90.1. And so, again, I don't know.
what does that mean?
It's the energy code, the Michigan Energy Code that was adopted April 22nd. It's the energy code for the state of Michigan. Obviously, they're gonna have to comply with that, but the 30 feet height may be exceeding what's allowed under the building code. I just wanted to caution that.
You talk about
Not-
the Boca code updates?
BOCA hasn't been used for a couple decades now. It's the International Code Council with Michigan Building Code.
Well,
And the Michigan
building.
Energy Code is a part of that. It's a
Oh.
separate document.
Okay.
It's governing the entire state of Michigan. So I just wanted to caution that, some things might be exceeding that requirement. The only other thing to kind of note with that is down in number 6, motion detection. There is a new section in the 90.1, ASHRAE 90.1 that does talk about parking lot lighting being on motion detectors as well. So I'm glad that that is in there because that is now going to be part of the new energy code and a requirement for that. And I'm anticipating that that's going to have, legal challenges, people with car lots, things like that, security. So it's a moving target, but I just wanted to again make you aware that that is a requirement now under the Michigan Energy Code. So with that, thank you. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it and I'm excited about this.
I guess the one thing on it though is that we're not gonna be able to fix your existing lighting problems, right? This is all
Right.
futures.
Future.
People are grandfathered in, so.
Yep. Nope. Understand that.
Okay. Did you get all the comments there, Scott?
Yeah, I wrote them down.
Okay.
So I'll look into that those building code issues, and we might as well comply with the building code requirements. Yeah, that will be helpful because yeah, usually, I mean, they really hate looking through the 1,000,000-page book to try to find what I'm talking about when I call over there.
Are these officially adopted by the state of Michigan, do you know, Mark?
Yeah, we were under the 2015 Michigan Building Code and Michigan Energy Code until April 9th for the Michigan Building Code and April 22nd for the Michigan Energy Code.
Okay.
So those are adopted under the state of Michigan now,
What year are they monitoring?
2021.
2021 was,
And the 2021 Michigan Energy Code, they always refer to the ASHRAE 90.1 standard 2 years prior. So it's ASHRAE 90.1 2019.
okay.
So
I will say that the Stellantis project we just approved had 30-foot lights in it, so we'll see if it gets through building code.
Well,
if it was submitted before then, it probably will.
It hasn't been submitted for a zoning permit yet, so.
Okay,
well, do you think they're even aware of it?
No,
that's just it.
no,
I mean,
because
it's
they
brand
have
new.
they have called me to try to get that 3,000 lumens out of, or Kelvin out of the condition.
Who called you? The Chrysler?
Yeah.
They don't want the 3,000?
I told them there's nothing I can do. It's a condition of approval by the planning commission. You could either do it or go back to them. So
What's
That
the,
is a standard like U of M. Okay, we have to comply with that standard that they have set too. So not anything that's unusual. It is adopted by other entities as well. So most of the lighting manufacturers are making light fixtures, LEDs with
Chrysler's
that
issue?
temperature.
with the 3,000 Kelvin?
according to them, it won't provide the light that they need at ground level. It won't provide them the security and lighting that they need.
I was just say they need to have a lower light pole. So
As a neighbor.
So they took it up taller, the pole, but then,
They want it probably to spread further.
What do they want it? Kelvin
they
is the
said
temperature, not the
5,000.
lumens.
yeah, that's just it. I wanted to bring that up too. It's color temperature, not
Yeah, I know. it
candle
is.
levels. So
So I'm like, I mean, just because it's a yellow light doesn't mean it shines any less.
no, but from a business perspective, was it just they wanted more coverage in their lot? Was there some sort of security?
But again, it should cover the same. It's just the color of the light that's coming out of it.
Yeah, it's
So-
candle power with
The candle
Yeah,
power
candles.
doesn't change.
Right.
So we'll see.
like the LED.
They haven't responded to my email to them that said, well, you got to do what it says or go back to the PC.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I guess you only want to close public comment. We're gonna move on to unfinished business, and this is the review of and discussion of draft zoning text amendment 25-001 regarding regulations for alternative energy systems, removal of the P5 zoning district, and new lighting regulations. So with that said, we've already kind of started talking about the lighting, so back to the 3,000 Kelvin. And what's the kind of the follow-up plan? Are you gonna wait to hear back from them? I mean, they're a major employer. I don't want to necessarily create something that's detrimental to ongoing. I don't think the light bulbs are gonna chase them out of town, but
Yeah, I'm used to working with commercial businesses that don't want to do what you tell them to do, so it's not a big deal to me.
okay.
They will complain because they want what they want, and then they'll just do what you have told them to do. So if if your community is where they want to be.
Yeah.
which I don't see Stellantis leaving because they have to have a yellow
light
color
bulb?
light instead of a white light.
I'm it's kind of funny. Okay. So as long as we're talking about lighting, we've been looking through it. I'm looking through my notes. I didn't have any other real comments about it. Did anyone have any things particular to the lighting ordinance? Their review?
Well, I see that the commercial, as Mike Van Gore was pointing out, has a lot more restrictions. So I'm wondering why the 3,000 Kelvin limit cannot be applied to residential lighting.
Yeah. It can.
So I'd like to recommend that to be added to that residential lighting section. Maybe it's number 2 or something.
Yep.
On page 33.
Yep, that's an easy change.
Is that too much even for residential?
Oh, it's the color.
It's the color again.
So it'd be more of a yellow
A yellowish?
range of color rather than blue.
Remember the old soft light bulbs versus the daylight bulbs?
That's the.
3,000 is more of a soft. It's a yellower.
Okay.
And
They're trying to eliminate the blues,
Yeah.
the higher temperature Kelvin.
more LEDs are coming out, and a lot of the LEDs have a higher end in the blue spectrum, and they're very disruptive in their scattering and with wildlife and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
Going to more of a 3,000 or less is less disruptive. It can be just as bright, but less disruptive to
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So this whole thing on the Kelvins, do we have anything here on how we're going to monitor and measure it?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why you usually put it in the commercial and not residential, is because with a commercial project, you get the plans for the lighting. With a residential, it's gonna turn into, I mean, every property out there, you're gonna be calling me to come out and check if the light is 30 lumen, 300 lumens or not. And then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to ask the applicant to provide me with or the owner of the property to provide me with the package that they got their light bulb.
But
You can, there are light meters that can.
But it's
measure
also
it.
every property in you try to make the lighting standards a little bit harsher for commercial because you have a lot more control, and that's where a lot of the violations are. Like commercial is usually obstructive, and residential you usually can work it out with your neighbor over that stuff. So,
would residential include streetlights,
well,
like in front of your yard or along the street?
I would like to eliminate streetlights altogether from Sylvan Township.
My thought is,
Because really the only place that a street light should even be appropriate is if it's adjacent city of Chelsea. So
my thought on adding it to the residential is that, for one thing, it could be a guideline. So those who are paying attention to this can say, oh, I better comply. But otherwise, unless somebody complains, I don't think we need to go out there and monitor every light bulb that's shining at night. But
Yeah, I could see it though, turn into a real
yeah,
neighbor versus
if
neighbor.
I get
type
100
of-
complaints, that's a lot of work.
Putting
So-
the zoning lead in the middle of a lot of nefarious nif-naf, right? All right.
yeah,
I'm definitely not going to do it. So you'd have to hire somebody else.
Well,
That's-
It's,
That sounds affordable.
once you've seen the lights compared, and you can get LEDs that are variable that
yeah,
can,
you could change.
you can change.
Yeah.
But it's fairly obvious after you've looked at it a few times that you can kind of tell that if they're close or not. And the bulb should be rated.
Yeah.
They should have the rating stamped right on the bulbs themselves. And I also did want to mention that we're using the term Kelvin, and it's Kelvin with a K.
Yeah, it's with a K.
Hmm.
where's the Kelvin spelling in?
Number 4.
Lighting should
33.
utilize light.
Better
Oh, yeah.
3,000
It's
Kelvin.
Kelvin.
Yeah.
Kelvin is the scale that we're using.
Oh, okay. Spell checker got it.
Yeah, the spell checker, there's AI for you.
Yeah.
But
So
again,
do we want to keep that out of residential? I'm worried about the enforcement side of it.
Well, we could always put it in, and if it turns into an enforcement nightmare, we could deal with it.
God, I'm gonna start calling you the first time this passes. I got neighbors got a light that shines in my window. I'm gonna be out there.
It's existing.
With a Kelvinator.
Well, and that's gonna be another hard thing with the enforcement. If they claim it's existing, who's gonna prove that it wasn't existing prior to this code?
All right.
So,
I think the neighbors, if they want to do it properly, they could talk to each other first and someone could refer, hey, can you use a more yellow light according to our
yeah,
standards.
most code enforcement, as long as you have neighbors that you can get along with, is taken care of before it comes to us.
Hmm.
You just talk to your neighbor, they're like, yeah, I don't care. Here, put this light bulb.
So do you object putting it into the residential section?
I'm fine with it. I mean, if it turns into a problem, we could always take it out.
And then there's also the option for like a guidance document or a pamphlet or something, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know how that works with commercial. It's pretty obvious, but I think we could still provide it for like new builds.
Yeah, I mean, we will. So we'll provide them with that.
All right, and then if you make those couple of changes, then we should be ready to go on that one. It sounds like. You'll get Thal to review it again too. I think.
Yep, so after you guys direct me to put it on a public hearing, then I send it to Thal. He will review it and then he'll give us our comments before the public hearing.
Okay, we'll see how far we get with the other stuff. I don't think we want to have a public hearing just for lighting at this.
Yeah.
Not a good use of taxpayer dollars, right? And then for the elimination of the other district, the P5 zoning district,
Yep.
does that require a public hearing also?
Well, yeah, it's because it's a change to the
Okay.
zoning ordinance. So that one's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
We're just getting rid of that zone. We don't have that zoning district on our zoning map.
Yep.
And I don't know if you ever had it.
I don't think so. I don't.
So it's an easy thing. It was in your master plan as a recommendation
Yep.
to move forward by just eliminating it. So that's just eliminated.
Okay. Does anyone got any questions on the P5 district removal they'd like to comment on?
what was the P5 district?
The recreation conservation.
Oh,
district,
okay.
and it's
Yeah, if you read the P5 regulations, it had to do with keyholing, sort of. But you have a whole keyholing ordinance in your that basically follows that P5 regulation. So I'm like, I don't know why anybody would set up a zoning district
all right.
for it instead of just use the keyholing regulation. So yeah,
Okay.
I don't know how it got in there.
All right, let's move on to the bigger subject is the alternative energy ordinance. So in our package, we had two packages. We had yep, thanks, Mike. Yep. We had exhibit A or exhibit 1 and exhibit 2. And then inside exhibit 1, I believe we were calling it exhibit A. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, well, it went over to exhibit A for some reason, but it's basically exhibit 1 and exhibit
yeah.
A are the ones that you're looking for. So you're looking at pages 1 through 38. That's
Yeah.
the new regulation.
Yeah.
So, but if you look at my staff report, if you want me to just try to just summarize.
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
What I heard from you guys last time is you were pretty okay with the stuff. There were some contentious items that are still outstanding. One is where you're going to put these things. So we had the people that were concerned with just limiting it to 0.5 miles from the towers. But then where would you put them if not
Talking
that?
wind or solar right now?
Both.
Either or.
All. It's actually all three of so one, plus one of the big things that happened is I got rid of all of the other renewable energy things like biomass, geothermal, just because it just confuses everything. So I looked at maybe 50 ordinances. I didn't see one that addresses any of those. If we wanted to address something like that, I would address it as all other energy. And then just put it in the industrial arts section. All other energy production other than, these three. So, but I wouldn't even do that because nobody else is doing that either. It just sort of like opens the door for them to sort of come through. We'll see what Rob Thal says when he looks at it. I don't know why Rebecca Harvey chose to add those things in.
It's probably a cut and paste thing.
So, yeah, but I can't even find ordinances that have those.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Maybe big communities or something. I don't know. But if you don't use the 0.5 miles, what will you use? Are you just going to say all agricultural?
No.
I mean, because that's now 90% of your zoning area. Your zoned area within the township is agriculturally zoned. So that would be everything. Or is there some other that you would like to use?
Is there, and I haven't been here very long, obviously, but is there something driving this ordinance right now? I mean, has there been a request or has there been somebody out there wanting to build something? I'm wondering,
This is being driven.
what's the pros and cons of the 0.5 mile thing? Because if somebody wants to build a wind turbine on their farm for Consumers Energy is bearing the cost of getting it to the
Right.
primary or
The
Transmission.
pros for allowing it everywhere is you are allowing everybody to have a wind tower. The cons are some people don't like the looks of wind towers and want to preserve the rural atmosphere of the community. So what the people that are saying, let's not allow it everywhere, are people that say, we want to be able to know that we're not going to have a wind tower next to our house in 10 years. So, that's sort of the pros and cons of this. And, it's perfectly okay to organize where you want these uses. That's what zoning does.
Mhm.
So, it's not okay to eliminate them altogether. So what the 0.5 was trying to do was strike a balance based on something, because you could just say they're only allowed in industrial arts district, but you more than likely are going to get sued because that's currently only owned by Price or Stellantis, and they're not going to put it there. So you're not allowing it anywhere basically. So, that's why this came up. You could limit it on, you could say you have to have 200 acres to put a wind farm on it. That could be but how is that? How would you determine that 200 acres? Is it 200 acres on a single lot or is it 200 acres that you've leased the land from multiple property owners?
With the offsets and the distances between buildings and structures and stuff, you're eliminating a lot anyway
Oh, yes.
with parcel sizes. So
Yeah, it's about a half a mile area with 1,000 feet on all sides.
I think the intent was with along adjacent to the existing power lines is that we've already got infrastructure in place. It's more advantageous for the developers in a lot of cases. And we've also already got the ugly factor there, right? I mean, those things are already there and people are already looking at them. So if we're going to allow these things or put them, let's keep it in one particular area, not scattered out all over the township.
And it is a pretty big area. So if you draw I just did it without having any, just hand did it on the GIS. It's almost the entire, so I wrote what it was. If you look at the map on page 2 of my thing, it shows you the 3 high voltage lines that you have.
right. Yeah, I can
So
see that.
where it preserves it is the upper areas by the lakes. The upper area by M52 up there. So the north, or I guess north, that's.
Hang on.
Are you on
Fine.
page 2 of the staff report?
Yeah, okay.
Well, these were the the lines are currently.
Right, yeah,
We're saying if we're gonna develop, let's develop along where those lines are at.
Where you might want to consider it, so you might want to say all the ag land under Kavanaugh Lake Road, or because there are some areas in the southern area that this doesn't provide for. So there's a sliver of property running along your western property line that doesn't reach the 1/2 mile from
Are we taking route miles or way the crow flies?
Ray the Crow flies. Just directly parallel to the high tension wire.
Because this map right here, a 1/2 mile from that, this is gonna be 6 miles wide. This is the whole
Well,
township?
No, you're missing,
1/2 mile on both sides.
yeah, you're missing Rank Road over here.
Yeah, you're missing some of the Rank Road. So where you don't get it is, yeah, that corner down in your southeast or southwest corner
By Goose Lake.
of the area. You don't get it
That
in
follows
any,
railroad.
in the lakes.
This is the new easement that they just built in when they crossed Old 12.
Are you
And
thinking for no, this,
But because this is allowed in industrial arts, also you get the entire, whatever, 3,000 acres.
Yeah, this follows
they have
52
There.
heading south. This one, I'm not exactly sure where that's behind.
that one kind of runs.
runs.
So again, it's more of a philosophy. Do you want to allow it everywhere?
No, I
do
get
not
that,
want
Scott.
to.
I'm just trying, that seems rather arbitrary just to say a 1/2 mile from those lines, because you look at
Well,
the height
anything
of the
is
tower. If we take the height of the
arbitrary.
tower up to
Right.
550 feet, for instance, that's one of the questions that you've got here. You're saying that, it has to be underground for 1.5 times the height of that, so that's 700, 800 feet. You're starting to get close to at least a third of that offset distance. They're not gonna bring it above ground.
Yeah,
at
but
that
it's a
point.
mile,
Let it
'cause
run.
it's a 1/2 mile on each side of the wires, right? So
Yeah.
you got a
Right.
mile swath. I mean, that's more than other people have allowed it. So a lot of people just say you can
Well,
put
it
it in
is.
my industrial
My
area.
point is that you're gonna take those heavy lines and put them underground. They're not gonna bring them back above ground to go for the last 1/2 mile, the rest of the way to the sub-transmission lines.
Yeah, they can't, according to our code, everything has to be underground anyway. So,
Are we talking
Well-
about something different then?
Well, to me, this wind discussion almost seems moot because wasn't there a study done and they said there's just not enough wind in this township to support
but that's today, not 2 years from now.
and we've lost all our trees from climate change.
Well, when they make a wind turbine that's more efficient.
Okay. But, it just seems there's a lot of agriculture down there in the southwest corner. They got Tantre Farm and, the area between Rank and Hayes Road, that would be excluded. I would
Like,
see,
You could state everything south of I-94.
because I can understand the wind tower, unless they make in the future an aesthetically pleasing wind tower.
I mean,
But-
people don't like solar either, though, so.
Well, solar can be buffered and stuff, but I would ask, would we rather see if farms are running into trouble and they can't afford their farm anymore, they've got to sell it. Or lease it. So would we rather see it built up with houses, or would we rather see solar panels that would help regenerate the farm in those situations? So some of these excluded agriculture areas in the southwest corner could be vulnerable for development or foreclosure on the farms.
I would say if I was living next to it, I'd rather have houses than 3,000 acres of solar panels, but that's me.
I don't think we have 3,000 acres of.
Well, you
Well,
combine
the
them
thing
with,
is, though, if somebody's gonna do that, chances are they may go to the state anyway.
Right.
They're just gonna roll this thing in.
Yeah.
right, so anything
People
bigger
get-
than 300 anything bigger than 300 acres can bypass our ordinance and go straight to the state.
And there's not very many properties that are bigger than that.
Well, it's not properties, it's
Or acreage, congruent acreages. There aren't a lot of those.
Well,
leased acres.
Mhm.
the argument too is, we don't want to lose prime farmland, but when you build houses on it, you've lost it forever. If you put solar on it, it can come back.
Hmm.
So,
I mean, solar, I'm on some global sustainability boards, and solar has its own issues with like microplastics and metals and things that impact the soil long term. So, I mean, yes, it can come back, but there are risks.
Yeah.
Well, there's risks, but there's no risk of it never coming back when you build a housing development on it.
Oh, you just need a match.
Yeah. Really big bulldozers. Oh,
So it sounds like Doug would want it on all properties within the,
Yeah, I disagree.
everybody else is on that. So this is a good discussion. This is why we have this discussion. So
Yeah,
you can.
I disagree with all properties, but I don't necessarily agree with the half mile thing from the power lines.
Yeah,
because
so
or the places that may need it, a lot of this is driven by economics on the farmers side of the property owners.
Yep.
Today. And, we may be excluding some place that really needs it. And to your point, for the wind, there's really not a lot in Sylvan Township that's gonna be good for a wind farm. We're too much terrain, too many trees.
And there's also a lot of moisture in
It's
this.
gonna be more based on, solar,
Yep.
what we
Yeah,
do.
I think the half mile is really is to keep it within the realms of where those structures are currently at.
Well, but see, that's the power company's problem. I mean, if
Yeah, but
it's,
if I wanna-
if it's more than a half mile from the power lines, the cost starts to soar because they gotta get that power
Right,
all the way
and-
back to.
Right, and
Big
we're
Sur,
saying,
Illinois.
that area adjacent and a half mile is
So you-
doesn't.
that's-
So,
The way I view that is we're doing the power companies a favor. We're
hmm,
not doing the
also,
property owners because we're limiting their costs from wanting to come in and develop it because we just
no,
told
I
them,
see.
okay, anything that you can reach within, half a mile of your
No, I
power
understand
lines
your point.
are free game for you guys to start soliciting this energy,
That's a good point.
alternative energy.
I mean,
not really free
We-
game because our regulations are stricter than the state regulations. So more than likely, if a company comes in that wants to do a large scale one, they're going to bypass us.
Yeah, I'm just philosophically speaking,
Yeah,
I mean, if we say, you can only build stuff that's 3 miles from your sub-transmission, they're less likely to come in and even do it.
Mm,
Because that's.
But they can roll us over anytime just going to the state too, so.
So your suggestion is to say all the property outside of 0.5 miles of the towers should be allowed to have it, but none of the properties within 0.5 miles of the towers.
Which is,
No, that's
No.
not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to confuse it that way. I'm just, it's a very arbitrary way to do it and it seems to favor the power companies.
I don't know
in the
if
economic
I understand your
model.
point, but I'm not sure I agree with it. I think the intent is to keep the development within those areas that already have police infrastructure.
well,
Well, Chris, what would be another way that you would do it? If we do it by zoning district? We don't want to do that, right?
No.
If we did it by like,
I don't have a better solution. I was looking at this and that didn't seem to be the right way to do it, but I honestly don't have probably a better way. And this is all subject to change in a couple of years if we have to anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Right, if the thing gets overturned, right?
is there a state standard related to distance from the power lines? I didn't think so. Okay.
no, state will allow you to put it on any piece of property.
And there was initially a reason why we did this. I think it was a mile and it was with the first person who wrote it because it was sort of like a requirement by the electrical companies. Like they wouldn't do it unless, but this is old. This was based on old information. So I don't know that this matters. If there's something to it that helps us meet our goals, and this is just like the variable we're using, that's fine. But it might not be logical.
What's the
Well-
goal?
well,
Is the goal to allow it in more locations?
well, my question is this about just the 50 megawatts and greater? Or is this all?
All,
Okay, because, I mean, even with the 50 megawatt ones where you need 500 acres, that southwest corner could be included because if you're going, 500 acres is almost a square mile. You have part of that solar farm within that half mile range and then you would qualify. So, but if you know, somebody down there in the southwest corner wants to put up 20 acres of solar farm to help keep their farm going and generate electricity, they can't because of this limitation.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they could, if it was the 50 megawatts or greater, they could go to the state.
right, but they may not have 500 acres, or they may not want to have 500 acres converted, but they may only want 50 acres. So, but it seems like if we say all agricultural zoned or, you know, south of 94, it's pretty much the way it is. It's everything except that southwest corner falls within that half-mile range anyway. So the only difference is we're choosing to exclude that corner from that.
Excluding now people north of I-94, because currently the line that you see above hits all basically the farmland on Conway and Sibley.
Not-
I don't know much north of 94 though, that would be suitable for that.
Well,
There's not a
according
lot
to
of-
Patrick, they've came and asked him about his property to lease.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
but that-
solicited all the time. We get letters all the time for solar, for wind, for
Are
gravel
you north
pit.
of?
I'm actually not north, I'm south, but I'm sure he's being solicited as well without even anybody actually seeing the property.
Mhm.
So we get letters from who?
Various energy companies, solar companies, wind, they're based all over the country.
Yeah, I know.
And so
back-
they're just fishing right now. They
Yeah.
don't really
Yeah.
know if that's where
They're-
they want
they're
to be or not.
offering-
They're looking for somebody.
They're offering life
gonna argue.
leases,
Life-
millions upon millions of dollars.
Mhm.
We when we owned out on Farnsworth Road growing up, and we got the letter from the oil companies when they used to buy your mineral rights for 10 years, you know, so they could do exploratory testing on they were doing them somewhere around there, and they thought that the oil would be under your property.
Yep.
And they'd have to pull it out. You
Yep.
know, nothing ever came of it, but we received our 10 years, $5,000 a year for 10 years, you know, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and that's why I asked at the beginning if there's been some request or something that might be driving this, because it sounds like all we're trying to do is come up with a proactive ordinance to be ready for when somebody does ask. And
What's really driving this is that currently we don't have it in our ordinance. So
Right.
it's exclusionary. We have been telling them it's not allowed except for industrial districts. So because that's the most similar use, I think there's some sort of like manufacturing or something that we've been claiming is the closest to a power plant, you know?
Mhm.
So we've been saying you can only build it in the industrial district, and if they really want to build it there, they'll just sue you and claim that you have 50 acres of industrial land zoned industrial. That's exclusionary. You can't, we need hundreds of acres to put these things on. So that's why attorneys have started to like go, hey, we gotta actually think about these things. Because we can't just tell them that they can only go in industrial areas from now on.
I would say I'd be fine with the half-mile ordinance if those outside of that area can apply for a variance. Is that an option for them?
Isn't that, part of the, you can do residential solar too, right? Smaller scale?
Yeah, smaller scales allowed everywhere,
Right.
but we're just talking about the large scale right now, or I think I call it primary scale in this one.
Yeah,
you call it, is it?
like the 20-acre thing, they could still do that. I mean, it's not like we're saying.
Well, 20 acres,
Accessory?
you have to use the energy on the site that it's.
Yeah.
So you would never have 20 acres of solar panels because I mean, I don't know how much energy like farms use, but could you actually 20 acres of solar?
Mhm.
But I don't know, like somebody has a lot of greenhouses or maybe a dairy.
Yeah. Cause all the electricity from the energy would have to be used on site. You're
Right.
not selling it
In that, what you classify as a wind energy facility, primary and wind energy, accessory?
Yeah.
Accessory, basically residential.
Basically.
Why don't you use it
on-site.
on the property or like a trailer park that keeps it in the,
Are
Right.
you and your neighbors?
or at Patrick's property that wants to build
Yep.
his tiny homes,
You're, as long as you're using it on site.
right?
How much
and-
properties are we talking about in the other area down there, Doug?
Pardon?
The area south that you're concerned about?
That's being excluded.
Yeah.
That's around Goose Lake, between,
This is
Rank
down in
Road.
here, right?
yeah, Rank and Hayes in this area here. That's further than a half mile from,
Tantray Farms and
right.
that, this whole area right down in here. That power line. So the one comes,
They're pretty-
that one on your right, that comes right
Yeah,
down
yeah,
through
no,
here.
Understand now.
And then this one comes around the backside and
The other one kind of goes out that way.
it follows the railroad all the way out. So yeah.
I
it
mean,
comes-
we're being
so-
pretty generous. I mean,
Yeah, we are. And this area here is,
I guess if somebody wanted to come in and petition for, it, I wouldn't have a problem. with
All right,
that.
if that's an option, if they could apply for a variance, then.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Scott? Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't stop them.
They're not usually approved. So
Well-
I mean, I would try to come up with some regulations that would allow them down there if that's where you want them.
the difference between saying just south of 94 or following the power corridors is that it would be this area here that we eliminate.
Yeah, you could say both. You could
By going
say
south
all
of
the
94.
properties zoned agricultural south of I-94 and all the properties within half a mile
power
of the
corridor.
power lines, because then you would get both of those areas.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the reasoning that you're saying that is because that's where most of the existing farmland is, and you're
Right.
trying to preserve farmland into the future. Because you have to make it clear of your intent of why you're creating the regulation the way you're creating it.
Yeah, I like that solution.
Yeah, realistically, how much of that, other than maybe Chrysler is?
Well, Chrysler's already in there because it's industrial arts. And we
No, I
allow
mean,
it.
but if we look from a development perspective, if you were to start bundling all these parcels together, is it even realistic we would have to have solar farms out there is my question.
Well, that's a theoretical
Yeah.
question. Is anything realistic when an acre costs $80,000 in Washtenaw County?
No.
So is a farmer really going to lease it for $5,000 an acre when they could develop it for
Right.
$80,000 an acre?
Yeah, they would. I really do think they would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that area a little bit and I don't see a lot of practicality putting any kind of solar or wind down there.
Down in the, where are we?
Southwest,
Southwest
yeah.
corner.
Right.
Hayes Road, Tantray Farms, all that. There's a lot of small farm fields.
Topographically, yeah,
Right.
it's a lot of, yeah.
It's all agricultural, but there's a lot of woods in there, a lot of rolling hills.
Cost them a lot to develop it and flatten it to maybe pull it down.
Yeah,
But with Scott's suggestion, just saying all ag south of 94, that's going to include that. Whether they're going to find it viable or not, that's their choice. But rather than saying us telling them, no, you can't do it at all. But then within a half a mile, so that would help with the part.
Yeah, then
north.
we're gonna have someone like Patrick come in and say, well, I'm north of 94, how's can be excluded me, right?
Well, he's not going to complain.
Well,
he
we were
didn't
talking
have
about
enough
doing
room to
both.
do it, does he? I mean, his
He's got-
property is what,
20 acres.
20 acres?
Yeah, but he'll come up with some.
Yeah, but
He turned it
get
down in the past.
20 people together and lease all of their land is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, none of
None of
the
these choices are
500
great,
acre
are they?
ones are on a single person's property. So they have leased multiple leases of land.
Hmm.
That's why the ordinance is written with that wording that says, you know, has to be such a distance from a non-participating piece of property,
Well-
because a lot of the properties participate.
Maybe the question that we want to ask is, do we want to make it restrictive and kind of force the issue for them to come in and look for variances because they want to do something outside of the ordinance? So we know, or do we want to open it up that would allow some of this to start to happen without much intervention from us?
That is definitely the entire question about the entire thing that we've been going through, because again, this is more restrictive than the state regulations.
Right.
It was chosen to be that way by the planning commission,
Chosen to
not
be
by me.
workable.
Well, if that's the intent of this committee or this commission, I don't have a bias one way or the other. I'm trying to, I tend to favor the property owners when we're doing stuff for anything that I work on anyway.
Well, there are a lot of property owners that would be very disappointed in having a solar or wind farm next to them.
Understood.
Yeah, no, there'd be a lot of,
I think the concern of the thought of all our farm fields being converted into wind and solar farms is a bit unrealistic. I think portions here and there would have the opportunity, but most,
well,
as
we,
we say, would not really be viable or.
I'll give you something I was reading the other night. So Wisconsin's got this 2040 goal, right, to be carbon neutral. To hit the peak and be able to do alternative energy in the month of January, because you have to build out for your worst case scenario. 10% of all the land mass in Wisconsin would have to be solar panels. So if we've got this similar situation in Michigan to be 2040 neutral, right? We're all good. This whole solar thing's gonna blow out. So I think personally, I think it's realistic that we could see a lot of demand for this just from the energy need for, based upon the political goals of being, carbon neutral. So.
Again, the way our ordinance is put together right now, we're pretty much covering the entire area south of 94 anyway. We're just excluding that little corner.
Yeah, no,
And
on that,
some
but I'm
along the
thinking,
east
no,
side.
if we say south of 94, somebody could come in and say, well, I'm north of 94, why'd you exclude me here? Right.
Well,
That's the other side of the equation.
Well, and
But
that's
think-
gonna happen no matter where you put it.
Exactly.
Right? That's the problem. That's why you have to link it to something and then make a finding of why you're using that thing.
I mean, right now,
I mean, I'm okay with south of 94 and adjacent to the power lines. And if they want to come in with a special use, I'm fine with that. I mean,
It's all anything would require a special use permit, so.
Right.
All of these will require special use permits, so that's one of the reasons we're not a CREO, right? Because CREO doesn't allow us to have any discretionary review over these
right.
items where special use permits are discretionary.
So if we say south of 94 and adjacent to the high power tensions, I'd say within 2 miles, then that would cover that area too, right?
Nope.
It gives some sort of framework or a mile.
2 miles would be everywhere.
Or say a mile, right?
mile.
Instead of a half mile.
A mile would be pretty close
Well-
to the edge of the lake.
I'm pretty sure
Would
the
it?
first draft, we had it as a mile.
Yeah,
And so then we reduced it
Took it
down to
down to-
half.
But Mike, you said south of 94. So that's going to include that Goose Lake, Tantry area anyway.
yeah, everything south of.
And adjacent to
Right,
the,
and so that would help include the north of 94
so
next.
south of 94 and adjacent to the.
Right.
Well, adjacent to the power lines would mean you have.
No, south of 94 adjacent to the power lines, not.
So it has to meet both.
It's
conditions.
both. You can either be south of 94 or adjacent to the power lines within 0.5 miles, and that would get everybody south of I-94. And then all the people north of I-94 that are within 0.5 miles of a high tension wire.
So we'd have to use the words or.
Right.
I mean, the word or. Not
That's-
That's what you were saying.
I was saying,
And that will get, so
No
basically.
or.
no
what-
war, I'm just saying.
Basically, what that would get you is everybody south.
Yeah.
And then the people within 0.5 miles. So the people that would be excluded are anybody on Kavanaugh, in the Kavanaugh Lake area or past Kavanaugh Lake on Kavanaugh Lake Road
Oh, yeah.
that are in our community, and probably most of the people up by Bush, Lingang, and those areas that are pretty developed anyway.
Or
We're talking commercial development here, and then, I see those areas out there, people might want to do their own thing, their accessory systems, but they're not gonna be.
Right.
looking at
Well,
primary.
that's what I'm agreeing with you. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a lot of your township that is going to be able to allowed to have wind and solar, commercial wind and solar facilities.
Yeah.
And
But
it's
I think I
very
agree with
rare that
Mike
they be
anything
built on
north
20
along
acres.
Garvey
They're gonna
Road
be
should also
300
be
plus
restricted.
acre
Yeah.
sites.
Cause there
Yeah.
really isn't anything there. There's one big parcel here between Old 12 and Garvey that, I'm not sure what it's doing nowadays, but I mean, it's,
South of
there's-
94 period, right?
I think I would, yeah, I would lean that way. And I mean, we're just trying to create a proactive
Right.
ordinance so that it's out there and we're not being restrictive.
Yeah, so that you're allowing it.
And if somebody north does really want it, prove it to us.
And again,
They can go to. the
they
state.
can go to the state if they're over the 50 megawatts. So 300 acres.
I can't think of any place north of 94 that could get the area to do that.
State of Michigan. From their state.
There would be
I don't-
right-
If
I don't
they
know any.
decide to start.
I'm not
tearing apart
familiar
water
with the
those,
farmers
that's-
in this area.
Well,
State.
That's,
Because nobody's gonna want to.
That's gonna be a different type of rebellion.
They're gonna want to chunk
No,
100-acre or
state wouldn't do
50-acre lots together.
Yeah, there's no room for wind or solar in any of that dark green right now.
But didn't they do it? They did a study a few years ago that there's not enough wind in our township.
Yeah, but we talked about it earlier, but I think the idea is that as the turbines get better in time.
Yeah, we'll talk about those wind turbines a little in this next section when we talk about the heights, because as you can see from the graph that I gave you guys, they are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it allows them to capture more of the wind because they are getting higher in the sky.
So we're good with south of 94 then?
I am.
Have a consensus.
Yeah, no, I'm
Electric,
okay with
yeah.
south of 94. If we-
Solar.
We're gonna,
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
it's just, we're saying all south of 94, or are we including that and?
I think just south of 94 and then,
Have all,
Keep-
all south of 94 and within a half a mile of the power line.
Strike the,
No,
south of 94.
south of 94 and agricultural zone.
All agricultural south of 94.
And then all industrial arts and industrial zoned properties,
Yep,
right?
with the
Yeah.
exception of wind. Solar's fine.
Don't confuse us.
I want 'em. I don't want.
And- well, it's not gonna work.
And the reason you're doing that is because you believe that you're trying to preserve the large farming acres that we currently have left in this community.
And our rural character.
So do we need this as a motion or are we?
No, I think let's want to
consensus?
get her to.
I'll make them say it again next
say
time
it,
when it's a
then
public
we
hearing.
get to it. He's
Okay.
gonna have to go back and up.
The agriculture,
Okay.
large agricultural properties that remain within the community.
This isn't like a final,
No, I
Okay.
think this will, I know Scott wanted to have a meeting, but I don't think we're gonna get to that.
What? I missed it.
Or the public hearing, because we need to be really ready for the public hearing.
This is easy stuff. We don't need another meeting. I mean, this all costs you a lot of money, you know? I'm charging you $100 for every hour that I sit here and you make me write another report
That's all right.
and bring it back to you for these like 3
Oh, we're not,
things that we're adding in.
we haven't started yet.
Oh.
I mean, this is the problem
Hold
with
on.
this.
Sue, go ahead.
I mean, they only budgeted so much for this year for planning services. If you're going to use thousands of my hours to get easy things, I tried to make I got rid of biomass, got rid of everything.
No, I
trying to just
understand that.
bring-
I still got other comments. on it.
Yeah, bring them, bring
I
them, bring
don't-
them, bring
I
'em.
don't
Let's
think
see if
they're-
we can get them done and get to.
I'm
a
not gonna
public-
rush through this just to do something to make you happy and worry about spending $500 more when we could have done something right.
We're never gonna get to a hearing.
No, we will. So One of the questions on the.
Do-
solar.
Do we want to talk about the height before we get into your comments?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So let's discuss the height because that was another hot button topic from last meeting. You know, we went through and there was not a set number that you guys created. I had put 275 in there. I have ran that 275 through our attorney through sustainability. Their sustainability institute says nobody's going to build a 275-foot tower. That's not going to happen. I mean, basically by saying that, you're not allowing it anywhere. Rob is like, well, you know, you are allowing it as long as they go to the state, you know, and have to do it a large scale one. So you're not eliminating it. You're just saying if you want to come in and do it through our ordinance, you have to go smaller. So he was okay with 275.
Okay.
He would have liked 350 because there has been lawsuits that have held up that have the 350 number on it. Where I was is we could have 275 in the agricultural district and then maybe say 450 or 500 in the industrial arts district.
God, that's.
Where is the industrial arts district?
It's Stellantis. It's the
Oh.
3,000 acres over here.
I'll be able to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll definitely be able to see it. You'll be laying in bed
As
tonight.
a reference, if anybody's driven through Gratiot County up 127,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
those are
Yeah.
just shy of 500 feet.
Oh, are they
Thank you.
1.3?
Yeah, so if you look at my chart that I
Oh, that-
had
oh.
entered into your thing, you could see the progression sort of the, so in 2010, the height to the turbine was 275, but if you add the additional 125 feet, that's 400, that's a 400-foot tower there, was the average height of a tower that they built in 2010.
Okay.
In 2020, the average height of a tower was, let's see, 150 plus. So 560 feet tall was the average height of a tower that they built on land in 2020. So basically, by saying 275, we're saying a tower that was built back in 2000, year 2000 type towers are what we're allowing in our community, which is, again, fine to say, but because we allow them to go to the state to build the larger ones. If you want to stay under our regulations, then you build smaller towers. We know, because there's been wind studies, everybody's seen that those types of towers aren't going to get enough wind. So more than likely, you're not allowing wind if that's what you're allowing. So, but the reason you're doing it is for to preserve the rural character of the community, and those types of things. So, and that's just the start. Now you guys should discuss what height you want to go with.
I'm thinking it has to be a minimum of 5,000 feet.
What is the
So we
FAA
call in,
requirement?
Well, it seems if we have an unreasonable height that they just go to the state and then they'll put in a 550-foot tower
Anyways.
anyway.
Yeah.
But if we have it a 500-foot limit, whatever, they can come to us first and then we can work with them, it seems like.
Well, if we have a 550-foot limit,
We're gonna see.
well, no, my question, if they go to the state to get a higher limit than what we have set, then whose distance limitations, property offsets apply?
States. The states.
Does that stay with us or that goes to the state?
Everything would go to the state.
If we have both a height limit and the offsets that some people could probably live within without going to the state.
Without going,
They'd stay under our ordinance.
that's like when we had the meetings with the Sustainability Institute and they were talking about workable ordinances versus a CREO versus just ordinances that more than likely aren't going to be workable. A workable ordinance is an ordinance like you're talking about where you're trying to hedge your bets that the developer will work with your community. And
Well, I can't imagine anybody building a Gratiot County class wind turbine in Sylvan Township.
how big are those?
Those are 500. 450, give or take. The newer ones are getting a little taller. Actually, the newest ones further north look like they're getting a little smaller. Because probably they've got a little better wind tests up there.
Oh, yeah.
But they've continued to build north of Ithaca, north of Alma now. They're getting up close to Mount Pleasant.
Well, and know whatever you put into your ordinance, now you could always change it. Ordinances are living documents. So if somebody comes in and they really want to work with us, you can change it based on what they want.
Okay.
So you could always do that too.
I think I would
Because
go
the
for a
worry is if
sustainable-
you put in 600 feet,
No, I think I
and-
would go for a sustainable set of specs that were somewhere in between the 500 and the 250.
And let's keep in mind too, that the utilities aren't just gonna come in and say, I want to put a wind tower here and take it or leave it. They gotta approach the landowner. The landowner's gotta want to have that 500-foot tower or whatever it is put in there.
And we're also giving them we're giving them a year that they can actually test it with the performance bond to allow it to get taken out if it doesn't work, so. I mean, that's,
test towers, yeah, they're like little.
they're not gonna come in and just drop a permanent one in and expect it to last for 25, 30 years. They're gonna go through some process. But
I
that's
guess,
my 2 cents.
yeah, I guess from what I've read though, that some of the wind stuff is not as efficient as solar too, so for money invested. So there, I mean, it's all over the place, but
No, it's.
I'm
not.
okay with the 275 range. I don't want to go any 12.
My thought is,
You actually see some of those down in South Monroe County into northern Ohio.
Yeah.
They have shorter ones. That's probably closer to what we would see in
Mhm.
Sylvan Township.
as long as it's
Similar terrain too.
workable. If it's putting off the utilities from working with us, they're just gonna go straight to the state and put in whatever they want. But if we leave it open and workable, we have the option, we have the hope of reasoning with them and getting it to a reasonable size or something.
So when I think about it, it's like we can give somebody the option to do something that mostly likely would just be for themselves, like personal use or maybe something small, but anything high or anything with more than one, they're gonna go through some large company who has the funds to go through the state anyway. So,
So the way our ordinance is written is, again, we have accessory and primary,
yeah,
but accessory are, at this point, you're not putting up accessory wind turbines. You might put up a little windmill or something
Yeah,
on
for
a
like
farm or
livestock.
something like
farmer.
that, because we don't allow them to be high enough or big enough to actually generate enough power for a residential.
So is there any purpose to include a height limit for some, I mean,
There is a height limit on accessory. It's-
I mean, okay, but I mean for what we're looking at right now.
Well, yeah, if you don't put a height limit and they just say, all right, I want to put up a 2-mile high one.
Okay,
And then they'll come in and put up a 2-mile high one as long as the FAA allows them to do it. I'm guessing they can go up to, let's see,
That's what I was trying to find, the FAA
1,000.
reg.
The ones that are out in the ocean now are 1,000+ feet high. So that's high.
it's really tall.
But they're also out in the middle of the ocean, so they don't impact as many people.
Was
Are they floating?
I don't know how they put them out there. So I've never seen one.
Definitely anchored in there somewhat.
Anybody would.
Is it like the oil rigs?
Yeah, they got like the big thing underneath and it swings on it. That's what I understand.
Oh, they tilt it up like that when they put it in.
That's what I've read, but I think there's a lot of, depends on where you go, I think. Very. Keep them up.
Well, do we think that the 275-foot limit is reasonable to be workable with?
That's what I think.
Your 275 is gonna be your typical, a little bit higher than some of your cell towers we see in the area.
But are,
Those monopoles tend to be 150 feet plus antennas on top, get it close to 200.
but are utilities gonna say, well, that's not gonna be tall enough for this area, we need to have one that's 400 feet?
And then they,
Well, let's talk.
then they have to go to the state.
They won't talk to us because we're
We don't
too
know
restricted.
that, though.
No, they're gonna go to the state. If,
Maybe not, you know.
that's why I'm
'Cause
saying,
they could get in the line with the state, take months to get through this.
They could always ask you to amend your regulations.
Because anybody going through this process, they have the lawyers and the funding and the, yeah, the people to make it happen.
Yeah.
I
They'll
would-
come and they'll ask for amendments.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, right now, unless you allow a 600 plus foot one, it's not going to be efficient enough for this area. So you might be talking about all of this or not,
yeah, right.
It might be something that you just got to amend if you want to allow it in the future. Like right now, I think unless you want to allow a really high tower, they're not going to want to come work with you,
Right.
as you're saying. But they might come in and ask you to amend it, and then you would bring it to a public hearing, and you would have 7,000 people in here complaining that you're going up to 1,000 square feet or 1,000 feet tall
I don't-
towers.
We're not trying to attract the power companies to come to us saying, if we say, yeah, you can put up 600 towers, they're gonna be coming.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna say, hey, well, let's figure out where we can do this. What we're trying to do is create something for the property owners and say, hey, I need to do something because, my farm is not doing what it should be doing. And give them the guidelines.
And again, I mean, 275 feet's probably not going to be tall enough for that, right?
What's that?
275 feet, because no company is going to want to build 275 feet.
Yeah, but you're giving the property owners a start to work.
Right.
on.
Yep, exactly.
They want to pursue it, they come to us and.
Yep. I mean, it's just the start again.
Let's just go with it and see where it ends up. I mean, we can always change it. My thing.
Yeah.
And if we get kickback from Rob Thal, what I would suggest is we say 350 feet in the industrial arts district.
Oh,
Let's see what the feedback is before.
Yeah, we'll see what the feedback is from him because I know he would be more happy with 350, but I think he's okay with 275 also.
Well, he's up there.
Can we say 350 in ag arts and? Or
Let's
industrial arts?
let's see what he says first. I don't want. to go-
Yeah, and it's because the reason that I suggest not doing it is because Courtney is going to be it's the people that are around the industrial arts that don't want the 350 feet tall towers.
They're-
So let's see if the 275 it works before.
Yeah.
And then if he brings it up, then we can say, well, allow it into the industrial art.
or say, let them just go to the state and fight it, then keeps us out from having to tell.
Right.
Constituents.
If it goes to the state, the
our
board
hands,
isn't all going to get fired and, because they allowed a 1,000-foot tall wind tower because the state overrode them.
All right, I just soon be able to blame it on the state then.
Yeah.
Doug, you really screwed this one up. Mike, you screwed this one up.
Let's go with 275, see where
All right.
it goes.
yeah, I'm fine.
That
with
sounds good.
Right.
So those were the two big ones on mine. I did put an end of life
Yeah.
definition in there.
So,
Let's go through your rest of your questions now.
one of the things I didn't, and you may have covered it, but on the ordinance, need to describe how we manage shutdown approval and acceptance of the guidelines for land reconstruction. The board level approval required at the end of a project post decommissioning. That whole process needs to be laid out in the ordinance. In detail.
Which page are you on there?
This is the stuff I read and I'm looking at from a high level. I'll get into my page level stuff.
You're talking about the decommissioning process,
Pardon?
the decommissioning process?
Yeah, the decommissioning, that really needs
Oh.
to be spelled out. And from what I've read from particularly coming out of the Netherlands, a lot of their ordinances, they're really kind of neglected that part, and their recommendation was to have a very defined process. Roles, responsibilities, timelines. And I think, Scott, some of the timelines you put in there were pretty good as far as. So say we got a solar farm and we got a developer that doesn't want to decommission. He says, well, it's still producing electricity. And it could be enough to turn on a light bulb. So what's the definition of it's not producing electricity? We need to define what is the end of life. You
I
understand? what
thought I
I'm saying?
saw some end of life language. in there.
There is, so you really want to, I mean,
This is what I've read from
that
other
just
countries
seems
that
like
decommission.
you're creating something that's not really going to happen. Nobody's going to have be able, nobody wants to keep an entire system that
So
does a light bulb.
Scott, what I've read, particularly in Europe, what's going on with some of these older solar farms, that they don't want to go through decommissioning. Hey, it's still producing enough electricity to keep a few light bulbs on and a few other things. And the developer doesn't have to come in there and spend all the money on restoring the land and all those other obligations.
So we can do end of life means 50%
Need
is
some
not.
sort of guideline to say, these are the standards of what end of life looks like, right?
Yeah, I thought there was some language in there for that.
There is, but he's concerned about the language isn't adequate enough.
It's
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
prescriptive.
well, there's
Yeah.
that huge one that they're building in Lenawee County. That's been, from what I understood, the number one topic from all the property owners adjacent to it and anywhere in the area is what's going to happen when this thing shuts down?
Yeah.
Leave all this trash and garbage, you're going to clean it up. You
Yep.
know, there-
And we do have a decommissioning plan requirement in the ordinance that we have here in front of you tonight.
Okay.
And what I would say is all those people that come out and complain about that, there's not a solar farm that has been decommissioned to date.
No,
So they're complaining about things that actually haven't happened yet.
No, right.
So they might be dead. I mean, the first one might go out of commission by the time we're all dead in this room.
Correct, yeah.
Because we don't know
Well,
what it is yet.
Mike's reference is the Europeans.
Right.
And
Right, no, I
the-
just,
Well,
they're further
and the
along and they're
reference-
dealing with
The
it.
references is it happens on rooftop solar mostly. Like if you put in one on your house, it gets broken and you don't use it. That's why people bring this up. One, they bring it up because they don't want solar farms next to them. So they believe that this is a way to stop a solar farm from going in. But I can put under end of life 50% of capacity.
yeah, something that.
Yeah.
We've got the
So that's-
disposable, right?
Energy facility has not been.
Then I think the other thing we want to put on there is
50% of capacity.
no on-site waste disposal either for any of the items that would be taken out.
They can't just bury everything in a big
Yeah, they
hole in the
can't.
center.
Right, they can't bury.
Well, and all of that would not be allowed anyway, because we do have, I mean, you can't just,
I would
I
just
can't
spell
take a
it out.
dump
And no on-site.
I can't take my house and tear it down and throw it into a hole and bury it. That's not allowed. That's a dump site. So if I just took 1 million solar panels and threw them in the ground and buried them, you would be in violation of the use. We don't allow dumps in the township. You would also be in violation of tons of EPA requirements. So, but yes, I can write that in there.
I just.
This ordinance is based on obviously an ordinance that everybody is using.
I mean, a simple sentence like, at the end of life, disposal will be done in conformance with EPA guidelines,
Yeah. that's
Mm.
something like
current
that.
EPA guidelines.
Yeah, I don't know what the EPA guidelines are,
Here, by the next-
Current at the time of the
Yeah,
end of life.
but again, yeah, I don't know.
State regulations, relevant. state
Which
regulations.
they're required to do regardless of you writing it into the code.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I can write anything you want into a code, but you can make a code super long, like it can be 7,000 pages if you want to say has to meet building code requirements, 75, has to meet MDNR wetlands requirements, it has to meet all of those things regardless.
I thought we were
of-
gonna write the novel like War and Peace.
Writing it in there. But yeah, I mean, I can write can't create a dump site after the
I just think
commissioning or
on-site
can't,
disposal.
you know, you can write all that stuff in there. It makes a very confusing ordinance
Yeah, no. I'm fine.
to, to
I just don't
review.
want to see the thing turn into a dump.
Right.
They can't.
So, yes, I
You
can,
want to figure out. a
That
way to
in
word
there.
it, you know?
I see where this is going, so let's just keep going.
So then on page 16, B, or D, it talks about,
Required setbacks shall not apply to common property lines of
yeah,
participating lots.
yeah, I found that confusing.
Which one?
Common property lines, page 16.
Section B, paragraph 4D.
All right.
Shall not apply to common property lines of participating lots.
In
Oh,
other words, if you and your neighbor want to get together, the property line that separates the
Hmm.
two of you don't count.
Right. You don't have to have setbacks from them.
Hmm.
Which is how you explain things work. They use property from adjacent
Right.
owners.
Okay.
When you have a whole bunch of common lots that come together, because again, you're not gonna get 300 acres that is all owned by one person.
No, that's fine. I just wanted clarity on it.
And it is important to note, like, even if they do, sometimes they own them as separate parcels. So, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, those restrictions require, I've got a 2 acre parcel here and I looked at this to see if I could build a solar panel following these, and there's no way I can get it onto my 2 acre property
Why?
because I'm not 300 feet away from a neighboring structure.
That's,
Any way I look
that's
at
for
it.
commercial, so you can do it under accessory.
Yeah.
So the accessory, right?
No, I understand. I was just looking at how much
Yeah. I mean, there's
I
no.
didn't
solar-
understand that at
There
first.
is
I
no
couldn't
solar
figure out-
farm that would be 2 acres.
The difference between accessory and primary. There's actually a confusing statement in there under your definition that says something about accessory being the primary source, which threw a curveball to the difference between the two. But it's his turn. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm going on page 7. Did you get something for that?
No, in the definition, as it would just confused me because I was trying to figure out the difference between primary and residential and realized that that's where I realized the accessory is basically residential. And in the definitions at the top,
Yeah, primary purpose, with the primary purpose, so I can just change that word to not another thesaurus, whatever.
after I read it 5 times, I understood what it was telling me. But I had to read it 5 times to understand that. Because we were talking about primary requirements, and there's the word primary and accessory requirements.
Yep.
All right.
Anybody know what a thesaurus word for primary is that we can
I
add?
think your primary.
Principal?
Principle works.
I'm on page 17 now.
All right.
D and F. Land clearing and access. So one of the questions I had here was, how do we watch over and regulate what the clearing is gonna look like? So when they come in with their plan, right, we have to have some means of saying, okay, these are the standards, but how do we go out and measure that they've actually complied with them?
It's all gonna be in your, you're going to require site plan review and a special use permit, so it will be
Well,
in
I
the. site.
understand that. My point is, how do we get Scott out there to make sure they're actually following up on what they said they're gonna do, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think we need
without,
to have something in here about, I'd like to see something to be regulated, right? This, I mean, same with the roads, right?
I mean, we would have to write that for every single thing. I mean, we have to we have to enforce our ordinance. I can't write, we have to enforce our ordinance after every time we have
Hard
one.
time. Okay, 18, we got rid of that.
But yes, I mean, the problem with this has came up because we know this has came up in commercial or in just regular subdivisions. You go out and the grading is not done to the grading plan that they have.
Sewer
so-
is not hooked up, correct?
Yeah, it's always going to be a problem, and you have to have your engineers out there. Hopefully on these projects, they're not doing a bunch of extensive grading, that's going to be hard to actually follow. Like, where they take subdivision sites, they change the grade 100% from what it is currently to what they need it to be because of the storm drainage and all of that.
Right.
So hopefully on these, it's a lot easier, but the clearing is also going to be a thing, because once they cut down the trees that they're not supposed to cut down,
Right.
it's really hard to get a new tree,
Right.
you know, because it's gone, and basically you gotta wait 20 years again for it to be put back up.
Well, that and the bigger one is making sure the topsoil sticks around. That for me is, that's kind of the linchpin of all of it.
Yeah, and that's what that section is sort of created for, is that topsoil.
18, we talked about decommissioning. I got that one. 19, I had the comments, page
Right.
19.
Page 19.
Energy production, original capacity. This is one that kind of, what if we get a catastrophic event, right? At one of these solar farms, say like a hailstorm comes in and it makes it, it just destroys it, right? Then all of a sudden the operator walks away. Whereas in the ordinances, do we have the bonding and all that to kind of
I
describe?
think that's in here
I
somewhere.
don't know if I missed it. I know there was some talk about it, but
We saw bonding for the temporary year permit, but I didn't see it for the ongoing operation.
Because usually you would have a bond associated with the decommissioning, and then they would explode because they don't believe they're ever going to decommission these when they put them up. This happened with cell towers, obviously. When they started putting them in, we would put a decommissioning bond requirement in and we would require a cash deposit, because as anybody that's ever tried to execute a bond knows, bonds are impossible to execute.
Mhm.
oh, really?
So we would put a cash deposit requirement in, and they were like, well, this is just tax because we're never taking that thing down. It's going to be there for the next 250 years. And we're like, well, we don't think it is. We think it's going to come down. None of them have came down yet, but maybe they will when, Elon Musk's Starlink is up and running, and we don't need them anymore. So, they will fight us on that, but they more than likely will just go to the state where they don't have a requirement for it. And I would suggest a cash bond.
Performance
requirement.
bonding, the state doesn't have that in their regulations.
They have decommissioning requirements, but they more than likely will require bond.
I don't know. I think I'd like to.
Yeah, I'll look through it and see where it's at, because I swear there's a bond requirement in here
All
somewhere.
right. All right, exhibit A, page 20. Told you I read this.
Yeah, method of ensuring the funds will be available for site decommissioning and stabilization in the form of a surety bond, irrevocable letter of credit, or cash deposit.
It's on
Is
page
it,
18.
do we describe, so if we have a catastrophic event, right? Like a hailstorm and destroys all their panels.
Yep. It's under the end of life if it's
So
Under
then that would be
decommissioning.
triggered by the loss of energy production.
right. Yeah, also it says, or if it's in a state of disrepair.
Then state of disrepair, do we define what that is?
I wouldn't define what that is. I would let us define.
Yeah,
what that
and
is.
people will come and complain, right? Typically, or we would
Say that
notice.
again, people come in.
Somebody would come and complain, like a neighbor or
Or if
we
we
would
want to
notice.
complain about it, we would fight what a state of disrepair is.
Yeah, but if we haven't defined what we consider to be a state of disrepair, right?
No, I mean, again, we could define every word in our ordinance, and our ordinance would be 7,000 pages long.
I write a lot of policy for my job. Let's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's keep it general.
Well, see page 20, ground clearance, section 4, vertical axis.
Wait, where are we?
Page 24, item 4.
Item 4.
Yeah, section 4, vertical axis. Ground clearance.
So it needs to be 20 feet from the ground. So you don't hit something that's walking on.
So you can't
Vertical
jump up and
access,
slap
right?
it.
No height.
Yeah, go by and grab onto it and ride it around.
I think though, was it the vertical, there was no? Maybe I misread that. Height requirement. I thought something was missing for the
Minimum 20
vertical
feet.
access to have a height requirement.
That's those spiral type, the
Yeah, the cones.
barber pole.
Yeah.
They spin.
And it-
saying that they're-
And it still says it has to be safe for people, animals, machinery. We're looking at the accessory right now, so these are ones that you put on your own thing. So you've seen them, you know, like I said, if you've driven by the barn sanctuary recently, they got like 4 or 5 of them on the fences.
Mhm.
Those are obviously not 20 feet from the ground. Those little tiny wind turbines.
He hasn't come in for his rec tourism permit, has he?
Is what permit?
Recreational tourism,
No, he is not.
page 22. E2, section A, set.
I do have one on page 21 before we go
Yep.
far. So it would be the bottom, wait. It's actually page 19, but 21.
All right.
Anyway, it says that it's about the third party qualified professional of the visual impacts of proposed project.
Is this for
For
the
visual impact.
environmental
Yeah, visual
analysis?
impact assessment
Where's that at?
exhibit. It's on the bottom of page 19 of 38.
Oh, visual impact under QI,
Yes, thank you. So
Visual
it-
impact assessment, a
technical analysis by a third-party qualified professional of the visual impacts of the
38.
proposed project, including a description of the project, the existing visual landscaping and important scenic resources, plus visual simulation that shows what the project will look like, including proposed landscaping and other screening measures, a description of the potential project impacts, mitigation measures, and that would help to reduce the visual impacts created by the project and documented on the site plan.
Is this something that's typical
This is just
or like it's
yeah,
just like a normal job? Okay.
language that is in the example ordinance. So what would you like?
Well, I tend to try to avoid third party things in general, just because it's added costs and added complexity. But that doesn't mean take it out. I just wanted to know if this is
There's gonna be a
normal
lot
for
of
this
third-party
industry or this
review on the.
type of regulation. Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, other states have things like CEQA and that require a document that's done by probably a 10 or 12 different third-party consultants and usually costs around 250 grand.
Yeah.
I'm guessing when these come through and go through, because these are in the state regulations also.
Okay.
When they go through the state, it will be a very expensive process for them.
Okay. Thank you.
22 C2A. Setback.
22.
Yeah, page 22.
inhabited structures.
1.5 times the height.
Yeah.
So 2A, I,
Under C,
inhabited structures.
yeah. Under C2A.
Yeah.
What this, actually, I had a question about this one too.
Go ahead. I was just. How'd we come up
It
with
says
the
1.5 times the height of the wind turbine or 1,000 feet and
Whichever
the
is
distance of
Oh,
the
yeah.
greater of the following.
Right.
Which means if we're only gonna even allow a 550-foot tower, it's still 1,000 feet.
Mhm, right.
So that,
So
1.5
that,
times.
where that would be if you have, so yes, if we allowed a 275-foot tower, 1.5 times isn't 1,000 feet, so it would be 1,000 feet is your setbacks.
Yeah, you'd have, that would allow up to a 666-foot tower
Before you hit 1.5,
or I took over.
right? So we don't even need I.
Right.
We could just put 1,000 feet if you would like.
Unless they put in a 700-foot tower.
Put a 0 on it and just make it an accordion slip and 10,000.
See, that's what prohibits, that was the thing I was thinking about earlier. That's what prohibits a lot of these because it's gonna be hard to find a parcel that's 2,000 foot wide just to get that clearance from it falling over in any direction.
Right, you're talking almost a half mile.
Right. Kind of
Two.
conflicts with that.
Page 20.
So did you,
But yeah,
we want to leave in the 1,000, not the 1.5 times, or would you rather leave in the 1.5 times and not the 1,000?
I think 1.5 times. It kind of works out the same.
Well, it's less.
no,
Is it
if we settle it to make math easy, if we settle on a 300 foot tower, that means 450 feet.
50, okay.
And then they come along, they put up a 500 foot tower 10 years from now. They're still only 450 feet from the road.
This is not from the property line. It's from the closest inhabited structure. So again,
How about 2.5, make it 2.5 then? Inhabited structure, right? I mean, somebody's living there.
right. It's an inhabited structure.
Yeah,
On
I
an
think the
adjacent-
definition means that barns don't count,
Right.
but
Well, chickens. I think.
public library. Chicken. Well, that actually, somebody might take objection to that. Could chicken coops and
You don't want your.
Livestock.
chickens-
dairy barns.
you
They
want
don't
your
love
chickens
noise
without
or
legs 'cause
shadows or
there's
what.
something going on next door.
Well, they're talking.
They don't love
if it
being
falls
eaten
over.
either.
All right.
Yeah.
So 2.5 and take the 1,000 out or something like that?
It's up to you guys again. What, would you rather have the dimension as based on on the
Close.
height of the
Well,
structure?
it's directly related to whatever the height restriction is
Right,
talking about.
right. So if we do
settle on
275,
275,
But there's also the noise and visual things. So
Right.
1,000 would kind of make it universal rather than, you know, you don't want to be the shorter tower, you're closer to it and
yeah,
I don't have a problem with 1,000 feet, because if they can't do it, they have to come for a variance.
yeah.
If we put it 2.75, then that'll go up and down with this, or with the size of the structure, right?
right.
They're worried if you have small ones, they still have a lot of noise and then you're moving it closer.
Right.
Well, there is a requirement for decibel measurements. And I do have a dB meter if you need to borrow it, Scott,
Yeah.
to go out and make sure they're.
Yeah, we would have a third party go out and measure. Cause
It would be expensive. You can borrow mine.
Yeah,
It's
but
a
those things
professional-
are not-
it's
will
got
not
the-
hold up
the
in a court of
windsock on
law.
it and everything, you know?
Yeah.
You can go out and look real professional, like you're the third party.
yeah,
That was actually one of my questions, Scott. Sound measurement and reporting to the township for dispute resolution may need some language on device measurement. Certification for fairness on a biannual basis once installation is completed.
we could do that if you would like. It's a, I mean, again, I
Did that with
don't
Rob.
think anybody is going to go through this and get any of this approved, but I could write that in there. That every year they have to come back to us and give us the sound measurements.
I think that's fair. I mean, Robin Hills, they were having some of their events out there. They were reporting back on it.
The more you put in here,
Actually,
the
it
more
came in-
likely they're not gonna.
Actually, Scott, before you were here, we did have people come in and complain about it.
Robin Hills.
Yeah,
We did having those reports.
a lot.
There is some benefit.
Do we get reports from Robin Hills? I haven't got any since I've been here.
Yeah, no, we did at one time, back when they were having
Where-
events.
Mm-mm.
Oh, events, not for their regular use.
No, it
No,
was more to do with some of the events.
their music.
Property line close.
So where would you want me to put this sound meter? Under the sound meter regulations? So where is
Yeah.
that?
I would
Sound
just
pressure.
take what we got
That's
from Robin.
page
Hills.
23.
23.6
Yep.
and put, so page 23.
50, where did you get 55 dBA?
Isn't that the regulation?
That's, yeah, township regulation, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's the township regulation.
Really?
It's written into various sections.
That's pretty quiet.
Yes.
A human conversation.
Yeah. We're,
if it's
we're
constant?
exceeding 55 dBA in our conversation here.
Oh,
Brandon.
I mean, this would be going on 100% of the time at your
I
house.
think that's fair. Yeah, let's if they have problems, they come to us or they go to the state, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the state is set up not in a DBA. They have a different measure, but they do have a measure still for sound. That's pretty low.
Yeah, they're all weighted scales. There's different scales you can use and
Ours is based on, I think DBA is measured at a single point or something like that, and they do a point over a graduated period of time or something at the state level, which I don't know how we would, I mean, that we'd have to set up something out in the field and measure it for a day, you know, and then figure it out, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on to page 24 and then present, and we talk about shadow flicker.
that one's interesting.
You too.
We can tell them to shut it off between 3:15 and 4:20
Yeah,
on these days because that's when it's gonna flicker in their windows.
yeah. I take it that's just the rotation and the light flashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunlight.
Shadow flicker, and that again is just from the example ordinance, all that wording is just from the example
Oh, boy.
ordinance that's out there.
Well, that's the idea too, if it's.
I mean, again, when they give us a shadow study, we're going to have a third party review it, because what are we gonna know about it?
No, that's what I just said. How do we regulate this and review it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's nothing that I've studied in the past.
Well, there's a lot of things that they.
30 hours per
Nobody
year or
has
30
studied
minutes
in
a
it.
day.
Yeah, I guess future citizens may ask at some point. So if we get in a public hearing, someone asks about it, I said, well, our answer is that's up to a third party at some point in the future. Is that-
No, they would submit, just like they submit engineering and you guys can't review it. It goes to a consultant and the consultant reviews it.
Yeah,
And
how in the heck are you
the
gonna?
report.
And then you have to trust your consultant when the consultant says everything looks like it's valid and, you know, that kind of stuff.
But how do you, this flicker shall not exceed 30 hours per year or 30 minutes per day measured to the exterior wall of a dwelling?
I have no idea how to
think
measure
it would
any of
be
that stuff.
Done by calculations, just angle of the sun and the distance to the dwelling and.
You think
Which
people
changes
can-
Just some
Oh, yeah.
Right, so they
extrapolation.
would,
They have to do a whole year study
Do
on
a full
it.
solar.
Yeah.
but they
Think, yeah.
would know the angle of light.
That's expensive and that's very hard. I'm not sure I would.
At some points, a wind turbine sometimes has to be shut off because I mean, when the sun is at a certain point of, I mean, it could go 3.5 miles, the shadow flicker down away from you because of the shadow.
But that's,
It's only late in the evening when the sun's
Right.
low and can reach that far.
Right. But
We'll
that's
plant
why
a tree
they
behind them.
that can all be done by computer.
just close your shades at that
Calculation.
time at your house.
Oh, I'm just reading it and going, oh, this is gonna be wild, right?
And then you got to calculate in the average cloud cover at the state of Michigan, you know, and
I will
do that
tell
as
you
well.
that the wind and solar, or the wind guys, they have done these shadow flickers since they.
This is pretty standard terminology.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is just.
yeah,
20
they don't want us to
boilerplate.
understand
Nobody,
it because they
I
make-
don't know how any of that stuff works. I just
Right.
created it off of, yeah. I'm not an engineer that could actually do a shadow flicker study.
But I trust somebody.
Be models on the.
This one could be me, but let me just see if I can read it. Accessory battery storage in all districts. We allowing that?
Which accessory,
Where
what
they-
number?
Just, I was just on, in general on battery storage.
Battery, the
Page 29 or something.
page 29.
We got primary energies and we have accessory. Okay, so accessory, that's homeowners.
Mhm.
I got one
Fence
in
height
earlier.
7 feet. How'd that come up? Do you recall?
Which one?
It's number 5.
What page are we on now?
29.
I was trying to write some stuff down. 28.
29.
Number
It'd
5.
be
Fencing.
Number
fencing. Yep, number 5. B5.
Not to exceed 7 feet.
What do you want?
I would like to at the minimum 7 feet.
That says you can put it up a foot.
7 feet is because that's the maximum height we allow fencing in the residential districts. So, I mean,
I think the point is there's no minimum there.
But this is the primary energy, yeah.
the fence not to exceed 7 feet. right? Doesn't
Is
that,
there a safety concern that we need to make sure it's not like a,
Then you could just put on a 1 foot one, right?
oh,
You
you,
don't have to put any fence in there.
I mean, they don't, why would we, I mean, who cares? I mean, we can't, if they don't put any fence in, I mean,
it's safe or
Oh,
what?
so you're telling them if they want to protect it. you
yeah,
can
so
require
we're not
something.
impact, we're trying to reduce the impacts on the adjacent neighbors.
If you don't want to put a fence up, that's your risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
I mean, they all have fences on them. I haven't seen any without a fence, so. This is battery storage, but I'm sure this same exact thing is under,
It is.
yeah, every single one of them.
Want them to be put, if this is their choice, do you want them to be putting like barbed wire or concertina wire on top of it?
We
Especially
currently
cell
don't
towers out in
allow
rural
barbed
areas.
wire in our code. So we currently don't allow barbed wire, but if you want to allow them to have barbed wire, they can.
I'm not, no, I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking if
Oh, so it's already covered.
you got that covered.
Yeah, I would, I mean, if we don't want them to have barbed wire, I would say it in these sections also. But I wouldn't, I don't care, as long as it's not
I'm
high.
just trying to think, the only I can think somebody getting into a battery facility would be this for a terrorist type of thing. Batteries heavy and try to cart one off. It's probably practical, right?
The terrorists are stealing the batteries?
No, maybe just trying to
Sabotage.
do disruption right to the grid.
Can you, yeah, I don't know. I don't understand the scale. Is it like a shed inside there where somebody would go?
No, some of those
Shelter?
units can get pretty.
Yeah, they look like a field of
Semi-trailer.
semi-trailers
Okay.
that have some sort of battery inside of them.
It looks like
5 acres of that.
desert. So
Okay.
So, but again, it will require a special use permit and site plan review. So you will, when they submit it, you will also have the ability to say, hey, this doesn't look great. You know, it's going to impact the neighbors. Can you make it this color or can you make it solid
Yeah.
wood instead of this? Or, you know, all of that, all of the discretionary kind of things that go with, has to blend into the neighborhood, has to.
I would say not to exceed 7 feet.
Right.
Feet is maybe, I
So
think, no, at Chris's point, there's a minimum size, right?
no. I mean, do you want to require them to have a fence?
I don't know.
Well, no, after you pointed that out, I agree that, you know, this is
It's their problem.
their problem if they want to, if they
So
protect it. I'm just,
I'll reword that so it doesn't say shall include. It's just a perimeter, if a perimeter fence is utilized,
Yeah.
and if you want it to comply with existing
It-
township code, can we just reference that? and
yeah, I could probably do that. I'll
Wait,
reference
that changes, this changes too.
that regs. I'll look into that. Cause we would have to do that for all. three
Yeah,
of
the other
them.
question I got is for these energy storage facilities, from a security perspective, they need to report back to the township on an annual basis in regards to any sort of.
I don't think they currently are written that way, but if you want them to.
No, I just, an annual report on operations, security issues, things that are going on that may be of interest. I would just say an annual report to the township in regards to operations and any concerns. Something along those lines.
Does everybody agree with that?
I don't-
want an annual report, yeah.
Do we do that with anybody now? Cell tower companies or?
And we do it with Robin Hill.
Yeah. You don't do it with Robin Hills only if they have events, right?
Well,
Right.
they're supposed to
Technically,
come in,
they're
no, they're
supposed
supposed to come in every year with their plans for the year and what's going on. They
Or their events, right?
But what,
But if they don't have any events, do
If they don't have, but they were.
They're supposed to,
They were supposed to come in every year with.
yeah,
That was part of the special use.
which I guess we should
requirement.
probably do that for.
But what's the
our
re-
sanctuary as well.
what's the purpose of having an annual report on battery?
I just was thinking more in regards from a security perspective, any sort of agronomic or other issues that may impact the township down the road. Just, it's more to get a heads up, say, here's what we're doing, there's things.
You could always write that into your special use permit approval if you believe that's necessary.
All right, that's fine. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out there's an idea, right?
I'm not a fan of annual reports because usually what happens is you get an annual report, you put it on a consent calendar, and then you throw it in the garbage can every year.
Yeah,
So-
it's like the
and it's
water
just a
tower.
lot of, I mean, and then all of a sudden, 10 years goes by, haven't got an annual report in 10 years. Nobody remembers that you're supposed to have an annual report.
Yeah, well, just
And-
think though, Scott, though, if we would have gotten one from the guys operating the water tower, then we would have found out that they had turned off the security cameras and the doors weren't locked correctly.
You are the guys operating the water
Oh,
tower.
but we're a third party contractor was running.
Well, we're
All
not
I'm saying-
operating the storage facility, so we're not liable if somebody breaks into it and stuff. I mean, we're operating the water tower. That's our water tower. We
I'm
should
just-
have a daily report on our own water tower.
You would hope
Yeah,
so.
there should be a
Oh, we're
solid
operating
asset plan
security
in
on
this
that.
situation.
No, that was such an embarrassment, right? You know, the fact that we went down there and Bob did this and Kim did this and Pete did this.
We're famous now.
We're famous.
We are famous. People from all over the world.
Here's
talk
one
to
other
me
thing
about
on
it.
solar.
You're famous for that water tower for many other reasons other than somebody broke into it.
Truth.
Well,
So
in California now, they're covering some of the canals and ditches, floating solar panels. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Hmm.
The Arroyos.
Yeah, so one of the things is that in Michigan, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, is that on a body of water, state owns the water. Bottom land can be owned by many different types of organizations, right? Like Lake Association, the county, the state, there's all these different organizations. We get people that start putting out floating mats, like on the ice for solar generation, which I think is.
You mean under accessory? How would they be?
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just trying to think, I could see that coming down the pike at some point.
Like it's a personal use type
Personal
thing.
use, someone's gonna put a floating panel out where potentially it's going to impact other people, right?
That would have to go through Eagle, I would think, if it's any kind of impact on.
Well, this is where it gets funky because they own the water, but if that solar panel, if they have to anchor it to hold in one spot, then it's into the bottomlands. That could be. owned
Yeah,
by
I
Eagle, it
think
could
you're
be-
overcomplicating the regulations though.
I just wanna say we wanna put something there that says floating solar panels are not allowed in the town.
All right.
Well,
And,
I-
nip it.
what if you got like a,
What about hovering ones?
yeah, no, one of those aqua blasters and you want it solar powered to keep your dock area free of silt and stuff.
Not
No, that's
floating.
just it. If
Don't
you-
make it floating.
No, oh, I don't.
Put it on your property and then have a cable run out to it.
does the state
No,
know
but
anything about this?
That's the thing
Since
is.
They own the
that
water.
I think to get one.
I mean, do
generated,
they ask you about your raft that you have out there?
it had to be pretty
I don't
good.
know.
I mean,
Doubt it.
what's the different impact other than a raft?
Exactly. There isn't one.
I don't know. Well,
As
the
a
top-
floating,
One of those kid
The top
kids
would
into it things.
potentially be solar panels.
I mean, again, the biggest concern I have with all of these regulations is they're all overly confusing a relatively simple solution, and that you just get something in place. If you have these problems come up and people are starting to put out solar in the water, we'll come back through and add that into the ordinance. You know, if it's a real problem. But I can make up 1,000 different, like I just did. What if they have a hot air balloon that's holding solar? I mean, are we going to regulate that? You know, what if they have, there's a whole bunch of what ifs
No, I understand,
scenarios
but-
that you can just create. But I
Floating
think
s-
what we need to get a base through the
So
system.
it's already out there though, the floating. So it's not like it's something that's coming out. of-
not here, nobody in.
No.
I haven't seen them in Michigan.
No, I
I have a lot, I have
Now
a
that you
lot of
told me about
lakes,
it.
What's
so.
that?
Now that you told me about it, I started telling them now.
I've seen them also, I forget what country it is, they're putting them along railroad tracks,
Are they-
inside the rails.
That'd be a good place
That
for
sounds
them.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really think every school and every industrial park should have, especially in Michigan where you need the covered parking. should have them up. Oh, because everywhere in California you go, the parking lots are covered
Yep.
with
Yeah.
solar.
You see
And
that
it's
a lot in
great because
Saudi
if it
Arabia, too.
rains, you got shelter and I mean, that's great. I also think that every house should be mandated to have solar on it. I mean, if we just used the space that we currently have that's not being used, we could solve the problem of energy. But the problem is that the energy DTE, they don't want to deal with that because they can't control the money.
That's
So we're dealing with the problem because somebody wants to control the money of energy. Instead of saying, all right, we're just going to put them on everybody's house from now on, and then we'll sell you back the energy. I'd be fine with that. Sell me the energy from my solar panel. You come out and put it on, consumers, and I will buy it back at the rate that I'm currently paying you. I'm fine with that because I'd rather pay for solar energy than coal energy. So why don't they do that? There's a lot of reasons they don't.
capital.
You got a lot of sunk costs, right? All right. So how many changes are we talking here?
Not that many. You got the setback, you want to just create,
Somebody just-
oh, yeah,
Oh,
someone's up there.
hopefully they just disappeared.
Oh, maybe they came on by accident. How long were they there?
They just popped up.
Oh, yeah, maybe they came on by accident.
Realized it was pretty boring.
Hard to butt dial a Zoom call.
Indeed.
I agree.
Well, they used to have those Zoom bombers, like during COVID, where you would get those bots that would like throw porn up on the,
I never experienced that.
never experienced that? Yeah, it was
Neither.
interesting. That's why we had to have somebody with.
Those were highly targeted.
Yeah, we had to have somebody with the.
I never
quick-
heard of that one. Porn bots?
Yeah. Quick shut off, you know?
I heard of it, but I didn't know there were bots doing it. I didn't see
Yeah.
that they were people being malicious.
Well, we don't know if they were bots or if they were malicious. I've seen them a few times though.
You know, they just found, in the inverters in Europe, they found cellular devices going back to China. See that?
Yeah.
Mm.
All right.
Right. So
fine
the
call.
question is, I don't put out the rest, do we think we're comfortable with a few changes? Do you want to have a public? hearing? Put it out.
I'm comfortable. I feel like we've been on this topic so long and we've had multiple public hearings. We've taken a lot of feedback.
And again, if you put it through and all of a sudden it goes through and you start seeing something happen, we can then change it.
That's true.
So at least it gets something up there because again, like Courtney says, we've been dealing with this almost 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
It has
Yeah.
been.
So I've been dealing with it for almost a year.
Yep.
So it seems like we need to get something to move forward. And if it's not this, I'm willing to table this and start on something else also.
Has there ever been a public hearing? for that?
No public hearing.
We've just had a lot of public comments.
Yeah.
And then.
So the public hearings always last after you create a draft ordinance that's more finalized.
Are we obligated to do?
How long do we get? Yeah, how long is it all gonna take to work?
He'll get it pretty quick, I'm guessing. So he'll get it before your next public hearing.
Yeah, I don't wanna get his feedback, but then 2 days later have the hearing.
Yeah. same.
That's
A
all.
week in advance, is that long enough?
It's,
Two.
I could, yeah, 2, please. It's been a rough 100 days.
Yeah.
I have a lot of reading.
I don't think he's going to have a lot of comments because I've done this exact same ordinance in 3 different municipalities already. And I've seen the attorney comments on them. So,
I still like 2 weeks to look at it.
yep.
Is this the attorney? we're talking
I mean, and so if I can't get him, because that would be 2 weeks from today, he'd have to get it to me because we have 4 weeks in between meetings. So if he can't, then I'll just notice it for the next public hearing. So we'll either go to the June 19th meeting or the July, whatever July is.
I hate this, Mike.
I don't know when July is.
You okay with that, Doug?
Yeah.
So I'll bring it back to that public hearing.
I guess it's easier if you plan for the July one, just then that way you got.
If he can get it done, we'd like to get it through as quick as possible, so. We'll see. I don't think he will get it done. We actually have an extra week this time too.
I think probably be worthwhile for the board to take a look at it too, right before we have the public hearing.
The board has final approval and they can come to all these meetings and look at it with everybody else. And I do send it to the township supervisor when I send it to the attorney.
Yeah, the last question I got is if PA 233 gets revoked, right?
Mhm. It won't change this ordinance at all.
Unless we put something in there, so in the event of PA 233 failure,
We still need to have regulations for solar, wind and battery storage. So why would that change?
I'm just throwing it out there. So
We would probably revisit the ordinance if it did.
What would we
I
might,
don't have anything in mind.
we have one regulation that references it, but it references it basically saying we can ask for anything that PA 233 is asking for. But then if 233 goes away, that requirement goes away.
oh, personally, I would suggest that PA 233 goes away, I would be ripping wind out there, lickety splickety, right?
We still have to allow wind. It's,
If PA 233 goes.
yeah,
Why do you have to allow it?
because it's a use. You can't have exclusionary zoning requirements. So we have to allow wind somewhere.
So if we.
So we're not putting wind in our township because PA 233 came up. We're putting wind in our township because it's an allowed use now. Before there were no wind towers 20 years ago. That what we would do is we would say, you're only allowed in industrial district because you meet this requirement. And then the wind companies started suing cities and townships saying that's exclusionary because you only have 5 acres of industrial. So you have excluded our use from your zoning district. So when a allowed use asks us where they can go, we either have to look at the list, and if we can find something on the list that's there that says wind, we say that, or if it's something close, something similar. And the way that planners have been doing this and attorneys have been doing this is saying, this is wind generation for commercial uses. This is an industrial power plant. That's how we're allowing these. So the power plant, industrial power plants like a coal plant or something like that would only be allowed in your industrial district, which might be, for a coal plant, the footprint's much smaller, obviously, than for a solar or a wind turbine. So that was an appropriate area for those. So again, I just want to make it very clear, we're not putting this in place because PA 233 came up. We're putting in this in place because we need to allow this use somewhere in the township with regulation. Now, if you want to have more regulation on it, that's fine, but we could put that in there right now.
Yeah.
I mean, PA 233 is not stopping us from putting regulation in place.
If we don't put anything at all in place, then we say we just drop this.
Didn't I just went through and told you the reasoning.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but then they gotta come back and sue you, right? Force you into it.
If it appears as though it's not permitted, they could.
Well, and I mean, they already know the playbook to sue. So, because it's already been done multiple times. So that's why we're putting it in. Anytime
No, I'm just-
like something is a hot topic is because everybody's already been sued on it, you know? So like when sign ordinance has had to go to content neutral sign ordinance, it was because everybody already sued on it and they already know the playbook exactly how, like if I came into this township and I wanted to put up a sign and you wouldn't let me, I would just sue you and put up the sign I want because your sign ordinance isn't in with Supreme Court law. So that's why we're doing it. We're not doing it because PA 233 is around. PA 233 is a way to exempt them from using our regulations. I think our regulations, again, are pretty restrictive. And they're probably going to, if they actually ever come here, primary or large scale or commercial, whatever you want to call them, they're probably going to use PA 237 because our regulations are a little too restrictive for them to use. But that's a big if they're going to come here, because again, we have a lot of reasons why they're not coming here.
Any more lively discussion?
Actually, I do have one question. And this is just me still being the rookie here. Gentleman that was in here at the beginning for public comment started right in on the lighting ordinance, which kind of threw me because I wasn't prepared for that. You guys obviously knew what he was talking about, and I had no idea. We need to keep with us everything that's been going on that's still open for the past, how many ever, anything that we have that's open.
The light ordinance is in this ordinance. That what he was talking about is on the last page.
It was in this package here. that-
Yeah,
Yeah, Exhibit A.
it's page, let's see where it starts. Page 33.
Oh, look
through
at that's the
35.
next page. That's where we stopped.
Yeah.
We started with it.
Yeah, we started with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just missed that.
But
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there
just
they are.
it's a smaller regulation, and it's just because currently you don't have these light regulations in your ordinance. So again, this is one of the ones that I was like, I want to throw it in here because I want to get something on the books before we start getting more lights. So, because right now, the way I've been dealing with it is most things in this township, like that are commercial, are going to have to go through a special use permit. And I, as your planner, take a different approach than many planners. I will go, well, lights should be turned off at 11 because you don't want to annoy your neighbor. And the standard says should not impact your neighbor. Your other planners never said that in the past. So you have Steel Electric that just leaves their lights on all night. You have the guy on the corner here just leaves his light. The tow yard's going to shut their lights off now because under your special use permit requirements, it's very discretionary and you can require that they turn off their lights. But I want to have it in the ordinance so that all commercial people, before they come to us, know, don't leave your lights on all night if you're not open or operating.
Yeah.
Motel
No,
stays.
I did not get that far. I've
Yeah.
been a lot of things going on and I got through the solar and the wind, and I thought that's what tonight was gonna be about. And I know we had a conversation a couple meetings ago about the lighting ordinance and dark skies and all that.
Yeah, it's because it's always been in this
I
ordinance.
thought I
Oh, yeah.
didn't have it with me, that's all.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always included it since I started writing this ordinance, and it's just because, again, I
This
wanted,
is all part of the same ordinance. When we say yes to this,
yeah.
that's going to include dark sky, all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a true dark skies ordinance, but yeah, it will.
No, right.
I mean, it is in all intents and purposes, but I don't call it a dark skies.
The weather radar showing, you know?
Because I don't want to link to the dark skies stuff because I don't even understand half the things it says on those web pages.
All right, so. Move on to new business. Anything else anyone want to talk about?
New business.
You wanted to talk about the courses, didn't you?
Yeah, that's under comments and concerns of the board
Okay.
members.
I guess we're gonna go to that, comments and concerns.
So let me ask, did everybody find that email that I sent out through the group? The planning commission
I
group?
saw the email, but I haven't looked at it yet, I've been
Let me see.
buried in AI.
It's getting to you, because we have a new planning commission group email apparently, so I sent that out that way.
Is that group, Doug, like a Google group, or is it just an email?
It's an Outlook group.
It's an Outlook group?
Oh,
Are we all in it?
Yeah,
Yeah, so make
You
sure you're not
mentioned using,
responding to each other on items so if you get that, try not to respond all and start discussing.
So that's basically just a distribution list?
Yeah, just a distribution
Oh.
list to
Okay.
distribute, like Doug used it to distribute the MTA training stuff.
Okay.
But we don't want to be in violation of the Open Meetings Act by
Okay.
actually holding discussion
Right.
with us all on those things, which nobody did. I mean,
No,
none of
and it's-
you
it's-
replied all.
It's important to say it.
Yep.
And it's a foible thing, so, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, our township paid for the premium package for, through MTA for their training, online training modules. So, I went through the different courses that they had listed online. To access those, you all should have access to the MTA website as members. If,
Yeah, I have access now. I've used it.
so if you just put in your email address that we use, correspond with each other. If you can't remember your password or whatever, you can just click forgot password and create a new one.
Okay.
But it should recognize your email as a member. And then you can go to the I think it's the education tab. I outlined that in the email, but it shows a list of courses and you can choose a course. So I would like to encourage, since we paid $1,900 for an annual subscription, that we each month we pick a course to view on our own time, and then the next meeting we take some time to discuss what we learned from that course. So
What's your idea on how long these courses take?
They're about an hour and a half.
An hour
hour and a half. So
Okay.
there's, I'd like to recommend, there's one, where is it? It's the, introduction for planning and zoning.
Introduction to planning and zoning, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, here it is. It's, well, one thing says it's a 4-part series, another one I read says it's a 3-part series, but whatever it is. I think that would be a good one to start with.
Is that in your email that you highlight that one or? I haven't looked at it. And my email address that I gave when I signed everything up, is that the one you're talking about?
It should be, yeah. Yeah. The one that you get emails from me.
Yeah, myoutlook.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should all take cemetery management.
Yeah, the way this meeting's going, well. But that would be a good one to start with, and then, some of us veteran planners may find this pretty quick and easy. You may find some new points in it, for beginners like me and Chris and Matt. Maybe it would be more beneficial to us, but as a starting point, then maybe next month we can just go over any insights, anything that we gained from that.
It's not a bad idea. I like it.
Matt, and was it you, Leah? Did you guys go to Intro to Plan? Somebody went to Intro to Planning in person. Was it you?
No, that's at the end of the month. I'm
Oh,
going to
all right.
a luncheon and dinner.
I went to one, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago.
Matt might have gone to one also right when he started, called Intro to Planning, but I think he went to the MAP one, not the
Oh.
MTA one.
Last thing I went to was the marijuana thing up there.
That's just the store. We don't need to hear.
No, it was the Lara when they were coming, regulation.
But if any of you have trouble accessing or figuring out navigating that website, just write to me and I'll try to help you get to the right spot.
Yeah, there's some very interesting ones on there. And once we get through the intro to planning and zoning, I've done about 8 this last month. And there's some good quick ones that we can do.
You do the nuances of the right to farm act?
No. I did all the how you know ones, all the newer ones.
Talking about
Okay,
So,
Introduction to.
because those ones are more interesting.
yeah.
bring up your email.
I think you understand the nuances of the right to farm act.
I've been to a lot of right to farm
You-
act
you
things.
Basically, yeah, you detailed it. You said GAMPs and you said nuisance. That was it.
And livestock, dimensions. And I mean, I've been to a lot of,
Paper.
it's really, the Right to Farm Act is very hard to understand. So more than likely, if we do get into a Right to Farm Act battle, we're going to get an attorney involved. Because it's very confusing.
There's a lot of arms and legs to it, huh?
I actually dealt with the Right to Farm Act when the full Sears went in originally. And then I left and Carol came in and took them to court and lost. And I had allowed it under the Right to Farm Act, so. Because we had already got into it once with them. So about that, so it is a very difficult document. And it is set up to support farming, so just know that when we start getting into it, that if we are trying to restrict farming, we're probably on the wrong side of the court
Yeah.
case.
Okay. All right, is there any other comments, concerns? Yeah. Chris, Doug, anything else?
I know I won't be here in June.
Won't be here in June. Okay.
Oh, we might cancel June anyway, right? Because we won't have this on there.
Oh, we'll see.
Let's see if we can get it done.
Yeah.
And did we never heard from Matt? Did we? Because who signs if Matt's not here? The minutes, you know, Doug?
If you're not if the secretary is not here, I can look it up quick.
I don't know that either, because the secretary is
President, Chairman.
Mm.
bottom. It might be the chair.
You want me to sign for him tonight then?
Yeah.
Minutes, like,
Once they're written. Dodie, you got the minutes done yet?
No, the minutes that we just
Last-
approved.
Oh, those.
Yeah.
okay, so I'll go ahead. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, sign them, and then if that's wrong, we'll
It's
just send it to somebody
It's
else.
right.
It is right.
Yeah.
Should be-
Do I have a
I
motion?
second it.
You second? He's adjourned.
Hey.
Thank you.
Get home before this.
I am having.
You should
I'll go load up.
As
put in your email.
I didn't even try anything.
There's three
I
things
haven't-
that she's supposed to.
Everybody's, you've got everybody's name and, as guest.
Yeah, and I think it goes into my quarantine. So I'm gonna go look at my quarantined documents and see if I can pull you out of there.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that got it right. I can't see it.
I forgot to ask myself.
Postpone.
Might have their email again.
Yeah, cause I have this weird thing that comes. Yeah, that says
Whoa.
quarantine, and sometimes I go in there and I see people's emails. Like I pulled somebody out the other day, and I was like, why is this quarantined? I mean, what's triggering this? Yeah, but why your email? I mean, it's a Gmail.
You said it.
He's going in slide. Oh, do you want to turn that?
No, but I get
That might be a good
3,000
idea.
emails, from citizens. So.